We'll be starting the session today. Stop worrying and start living. Stop worrying and start living. It's going to be another interesting session today. And we'll be discussing this same topic, this same issue regarding worrying, anxiety, depression, hopelessness, and ultimately, suicide. Suicide. Stop worrying and start living. So today, our focus will be on understanding thought disorder. Understanding thought disorder. Understanding thought disorder. Let me start by reading our anchor verse. Remember, the verse says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapon of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through God to the pulling down of stronghold, casting down imagination, and every item that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ." This has been an anchor verse since we started this program. And the emphasis in this conversation has been that our biggest challenge as human beings is really not what we think it is in terms of someone disturbing us from the village, someone after us, or someone after our life. More often than not. In fact, in most cases, the problem is a problem of the mind. In most cases, the problem really is a problem of the mind. The problem really is a problem of the mind. It's a problem of the mind because our mind tends to deceive us. And we'll see the way our mind deceives us today as we discuss the thought disorders. Thought disorders. People have thought disorders. And if you are going to be able to fix this thought disorder, you must give yourself what to think about. During the week, something happened. It wasn't very palatable. And I had to consciously, because I realized that the natural tendency for us as human, is for us to slide into worry and anxiety. Natural tendency, telling you, is to slide into worry and anxiety. So you will have to make up your mind that you will not slide into worry and anxiety. It has to be a decision that an individual will have to take. Else, before you know it, you know what happens? You find yourself sliding into worry and anxiety. So I have to consciously get stuff to listen to ensure I give myself the right thing to think about. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. So I am just strengthening that even though I talk about this, because of mental chatter that all of us grew up with, we have the tendency to slide into this from time to time. Slide into the wrong thought process. As in something has happened, and then you feel bad about it, and then you're not happy about it, and you're not allowing it to dictate your mood. And you're not allowing it to dictate your mood. And I'm saying all of us are prone to it. So I have to take deliberate effort. First of all, I recorded what I want to be thinking about. Having recorded it, I play them in my ears for most part of the week. Going to work in the morning, I play them in my ear. Why? I wanted to think about those things that are true, those things that are honest, those things that are just, those things that are lovely, those things that are of good report. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on this thing. Now, I'm basically saying that you must give yourself the right thing to think about. You must make up your mind to give yourself the right set of things to think about. So today we are discussing personality disorder. Personality disorder. And this is so critical. Sorry, thought disorder, not personality disorder, sorry, thought disorder. Because the issue resulting in depression and eventually hopelessness and eventually suicide is actually because of the distortion in your thought process. Now, the stigma of mental health, of depression, is just like any other sickness. So you don't have to be ashamed of it. You know, last week I gave some characteristics that show that someone is in depression. It's just like any other sickness. It's like headache. Then it shouldn't be something people are ashamed of. You should be able to talk about it. Why? So it doesn't get worse. The issue of depression is already an epidemic due to the fact that every 30 seconds, someone in our world is committing suicide. Every 30 seconds, someone in our world is committing suicide. That is almost 1 million people in a year. And about 400 million people are depressed in our world. About 1 million are committing suicide every year. 400 million people depressed. Why? Because of thought disorder. Inability to be able to know that we need to learn how to think. You know, it's amazing that you need to learn how to think. Else, you find yourself thinking of the wrong thing. Instead of thinking of those things that are lovely, you think of those things that are hateful. Instead of thinking of those things that are true, you think of those things that are false. And I will talk about example of that today. Instead of thinking about those things that are honest, you think about those things that are dishonest. Instead of thinking about those things that are just, you think of injustice. Instead of thinking of those things that are of good report, you always want to think of the bad report. Instead of thinking those things that are virtuous, you think of those things that are vice. Instead of thinking of those things that are praiseworthy, you think of those things that are depressing, sad, and sorrowful. Somehow, our natural tendency as human beings, probably because of the challenge of our environment, is what we think about. You don't have suicidal thought without having a thought disorder. It is disorder in thought that actually leads to, it is the disorder in thought that actually leads to suicide. For someone to think that life is no more worth living is because there's a distortion in the thought process. And you know, sometimes we go to churches, religious organizations, they actually feed your mind and your head with the wrong thought as a result of what they talk about. Your mind is being fed with the wrong thought as a result of what they give you to think about. And I'll give you an example today. So The suicidal thought is as a result of the distortion of the thought. Disorderliness in the thought. Suicide, therefore, doesn't just happen without an element of distortion of thought. Suicide does not just happen without an element of the distortion of thought. The reason why suicide happens is because there is a thought disorder. You can't just be in depression without a prolonged distorted thought. You cannot just be in depression without a prolonged distorted thought. Many people are living their life with distorted thought. Their thoughts are distorted. Their thoughts are disorganized. Suicide, therefore, does not just happen without any element of distorted thought in the mind of such an individual. You can't just slip into depression without a prolonged distorted thought about something that eventually become overwhelming. Become overwhelming. If you want to deal with depression, then you must learn to examine and be mindful of your thought process. What are the things you think about? Whatsoever things are true, lovely, just, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any praise, think on these things. Think on these things. So I'll be giving an example today of different thinking disorder. Different thinking disorder. You realize that the reason why people think the way they think is because of the disorderliness in thinking. That means we must learn how to think. Your thoughts affect your life. Your thoughts affect your life. Because your thoughts affect your life, then you must give yourself the right thing to think about. Else, you might degenerate from worry to anxiety, from anxiety to depression, from depression to hopelessness, and from hopelessness to suicide. Now, number one is called filtering. Filtering. The first thinking disorder I'll talk about today is called filtering. You know what filtering does? Filtering involves focusing on negative aspect of a situation and filtering the positive one. Have you experienced that before? Focusing on negative aspect of a situation and filtering the positive one. This makes you to leave all the good things that people have said about you and focus on only the 1% negative. You leave all the 99% positive and focus on 1% negative. So instead of being happy about all you have become, you concern yourself about the negative thing. You concern yourself about the negative thing. Sometimes it's sad. Ignorance is just so bad that something is happening. Out of all that happened to you today, the only thing, out of many, many things positive, the only thing you concentrate on is the negative. It's called filtering. is called filtering. It's called filtering. Filtering involves focusing on the negative aspect of a situation. Looking only at the negative thing in life. So, you know what happened? You must train yourself to look at the positive things in life. It's a deliberate effort you must make to train yourself to look at the positive things in your life. The society is geared in a way, we are wired in a way that we don't look at the positive, only the negative. So instead of being happy about the positive things that have happened to you, you're only concerned about the negative. They are only concerned about the negative. Another thinking disorder is black and white thinking. Black and white thinking. Do you know what black and white thinking is? This is also called all or none thinking. All or none. All or none. It's like scoring 9 out of 10. And you are seeing yourself as failure. It's like seeing yourself as failure. It's like scoring 9 out of 10 and seeing yourself as failure. Can you imagine this kind of thinking? This kind of thinking called black and white thinking, all or not thinking. You score 9 over 10. Your conclusion is you are a failure. Thinking disorder or thought disorder make you to have black or white thinking. So it makes you to use one characteristic of an individual to either paint him white or black, even when there are other features that can make you think otherwise. You choose to look away from it. You choose to look away from it. Just one characteristic. You paint people black. And this is how people label people. Why? One characteristic. The third example of thought distortion is called overgeneralization. Overgeneralization. This type of thought is generated by a single piece of evidence. And this is said to be the same for all other cases. This is said to be the same for all other cases. Overgeneralization. Overgeneralization. This type of thought is generated by a single piece of evidence. And this is said to be the same for all other cases. You have just one evidence. Let me give you a good example of this one. A very serious thought disorder. I met a woman some time ago. No, I didn't meet her. I've known her, but we're at a place, an event together. And look at what happened. She's from the East, and she said, all Yoruba men are irresponsible, and all Igbo men are very responsible. And they define responsibility in being able to take care of their wife. Now, this lady, I've had some men of the Southwest extraction around her for a period, and a number of them seems to have been unable to take a good care of their wife. Now, you know, but somehow, most of the Easterner around her, I want to assume she is not using the fallacy from the East to be biased, but she has observed many of the people from the Eastern part of Nigeria, and say that, look, these people are more responsible. And I have to let her understand that that's not true. If you take statistics, it might appear like these people are more responsible because of the people you have met. You know, there's something about our life as human, our reality as human being is influenced about our journey in life. Your reality as human being is influenced about your journey in life. The places you have gone, the people you have met, the event you have been to, all contribute. All of them contribute. Every one of them contribute to your perception, your views about different things in life. So many of us really and truly don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. We don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. So somehow you cannot separate yourself from what you are saying. You can't separate yourself. A part of you is influencing the picture that you are seeing. A part of you is influencing the picture that you are seeing. The reason why it appeared like this for this particular woman was because in the eastern part of Nigeria, the bride price is very expensive. That means, as a man, you really cannot be able to marry from the eastern part of this country, largely if you are not comfortable. If you are not comfortable. If you are not comfortable, you will not be able to. You will not be able to. You will not be able to because the bride price is expensive. So naturally, most men that marry in that part of the country already are comfortable and have what it takes to take care of their wife. But culturally in the Southwest, the case is different. The case is different because in the Southwest, they will tell you they are not selling their daughter. And because they're not selling their daughter, even if you don't have much, and both of you love yourself, they will allow you to marry. Very small dowry, and sometimes they give it back to you. Now, what exactly does this mean? This basically eventually leads to a situation where that man is not really fully ready financially, but he married anyway. And you know what happened? He will not be able to take care of the wife. So this woman concluded, because of cultural norm that make the tendency to be more to the left in the Southwest and to the right in the Southeast, he drew a conclusion. It's called the error of generalization. Remember, we are still discussing today thought disorders, thought disorders, thought disorders, thought disorders. It's like saying all Nigerians are fraudsters, and there are people abroad that hold that view. Why? Because Osh Poppy, Obi-Wan have been accused of internet fraud and arrested in the US. And there was a time that about 70-something people also were arrested for fraud. And then generalize it. You lost your last job due to right sizing, and you believe that you will lose your next job and all other jobs due to right sizing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? The error of generalization. The error of generalization. You know, a big challenge for us in the religious environment also. You know, a man of God saw in a family someone have an incident of job loss, or delay marriage, or delay in childbearing, or poverty, or bad luck, or a syndrome such that something is almost good has happened and then it turned bad, and they will give it a name and generalize it for everyone in the family. A number of those actions are just due to lack of knowledge, opportunity, information, exposure by the people. Some is even a medical condition, but you know what? It's generalized. This thought distortion become a mental disorder that could lead to depression. And remember, depression is now very common and frequent in our society. Look at another thought distortion. Another thought distortion. Jumping to conclusion. Jumping to conclusion. Jumping to conclusion. For example, this makes you to jump to conclusion that something is true when you have not have an evidence to back it up, but just believe it's true. You have just heard from a friend. You have not heard from a friend for a long time, and you just assume that he's not happy with you because he has not called you. He's mad with you. Even though your friend did not express this to you, but you just assume and believe. You know, it's so interesting that people will make an assumption and then believe it. Remember, our reality is defined by our journey in life. Our reality. So the way the person is interpreting that situation is based on the environment and the experience he has had. But he's jumping into conclusion without any evidence. And guess what? He might take a destiny-sensitive decision on that conclusion without any form of evidence. He might take a destiny-sensitive decision from that conclusion, jumping into conclusion without evidence, just because your history dictates to you that when someone does not call you for a while, it's because he's unhappy with you. And then you take a decision based on that and say he's angry with you. Another one is catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. This involves predicting that something awful is going to happen to you. Catastrophizing. Predicting that something evil is going to happen to you. Like predicting that you will forget what you have read in an exam. Or do you have an accident in a car? Or you enter a plane and the plane might crash. Just thinking of evil about yourself. Just thinking of evil is a thought disorder. This could lead to depression. And that's why we'll be doing this series. Stop worrying and start living. Stop worrying and start living. Because the worry creates fear. Remember the situation happened? It creates fear. Fear creates worry. From worry to anxiety. From anxiety to depression. From depression to hopelessness. And from hopelessness to suicide. And from hopelessness to suicide. And from hopelessness to suicide. Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. Thinking that something evil will happen to you. Thinking of evil happening to you. For what basis? It's because of thought disorder. Another thought distortion is seen as personalization. This is a very interesting one. Personalization. This is defined as seeing yourself as the cause of some negative external event for which you are not primarily responsible, but you blame yourself for it. Anything happen, you blame yourself for it. You're not the one that caused it, but you blame yourself for it. You didn't cause it, but you blame yourself for it. For example, you are in a relationship and you blame yourself for the breakup in that relationship, even though your partner has been very unreasonable, selfish, disrespectful to you, might even be abusing you. The relationship broke up and you're blaming yourself for it. And you're blaming yourself for it. Blaming yourself for what is not caused by you. Seeing yourself as the cause of some negative external event for which you were not primarily responsible, but you blame yourself as if you caused it. It's called personalization. Remember, we're discussing understanding thought disorder, which caused anxiety, which create fear, which create anxiety, which create depression, which create hopelessness, and could consequently lead to suicide. Distortion of thought. Another one is called control fallacy. Control fallacy. This involves the belief that you are a victim of an outside force, such as universe or fate. It makes you feel that you are being punished for something, even though you have not done anything wrong. You just feel you are being punished for something, even though you have not done anything wrong. Believing you are a victim of an outside force. For example, you lose an important contract, a job opportunity, and you believe that there are forces from the village, forces in the universe, negative forces that have caused you, and this thing is outside of your control. And you will agree with me that religious belief orchestrated by ignorance on the part of some religious leaders make people to think that there is a forces outside of them controlling their life, especially when these people claim to be born again. And the Bible says, ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. So they still believe that an outside force is the one controlling their life. This is what made many to believe on external forces from the village on them and the impact on them. And you know what? The challenge of that is this. The challenge of that is this. It makes people It now makes people to resign to fate and not find solution to the challenges they are faced with. Maybe it's not preparing very well for the interview of the job. Maybe you need to read well for aptitude test. Maybe you need to learn more about skill, interpersonal skill, to be able to respond to questions on interview. He will resign to fate. He will not do anything about it because forces outside my control are the one hindering me. So a lot of people that should have applied some effort, go and learn, read, study, to be able to overcome their challenges, refuse to do anything about it. Why? There is a force outside of my control hindering my progress. They don't see anything wrong in their own capacity and capability to handle the challenge they are faced with. This is what many are made to believe by a lot of religious leaders in Africa. And you know what? It has put the people under bondage. It has made them helpless. Unfortunately, they are not doing anything. Probably go to mountain, praying, and nothing is changing, and they're not doing anything about it. Another one is the fallacy of fairness. It makes you to feel that you have been discriminated against when things do not go the way you think they should go, according to your own perception of fairness. You know, among the Black Americans in the US, this is very common among them. Another part of the world where there is serious racial discrimination. Serious racial discrimination. Thinking that people are out to victimize you. For example, being reprimanded by your boss for coming late, even though the lateness was caused by traffic jam. So you believe you're not being treated fairly because it's not your fault. Because it's not your fault. The fallacy of fairness. Another distortion of thought is blaming. Blaming. He make you to hold. Now, instead of yourself, like we look at the other time, to blame others and hold others accountable for your pain. You have argument with your partner and you are blaming him for making you feel bad about yourself, but you were both in that argument together. He make you hold other people accountable for your pain. These are thought disorder. Now, the danger of thought disorder is the problem it creates on our mind. Remember, what are we supposed to think about? Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things of good report, if there be any praise, if there be any virtue, think on this thing. This is what we should be thinking about. But because of thought disorder, it has made people to be thinking of the wrong thing. Many people are thinking of the wrong thing. And it's creating a big problem in their mind, causing the fear. Now, imagine someone having a thought disorder on blaming. He won't have a good relationship. He will blame his colleague at work. He will blame his friend in school. He will blame everybody but himself for his woe, issues, challenges, and problems. He will blame everybody but himself. It is a thought disorder that makes an individual to blame everybody but themselves. Remember, we're discussing thought disorder. And so far, we have talked about filtering, number one. For those just joining us, Filtering, number 1. We have talked about black and white thinking, number 2. Black and white thinking, number 2. We have talked about overgeneralization, number 3. Overgeneralization. We have also talked about jumping into conclusion. It's a thought disorder. Jumping into conclusion is a thought disorder. We've talked about catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. We've talked about personalization. That's number 6, personalization. We've talked about control fallacy. Control fallacy as a thought disorder. We've talked about the fallacy of fairness. The fallacy of fairness. Seeing yourself as not being treated fairly. And we've talked about blaming. Blaming others, but yourself. But look at this one. It's called reasoning. Emotional reasoning. Another thought disorder or thought distortion. Emotional reasoning. This occurs when you are feeling, when your feeling is being treated as if they are fact. That is, your feeling is now dictating your reality. Your feeling is now dictating your reality. You feel somehow and you take that feeling as if it's fact. You take that feeling as if it's fact. And you act based on it. This occurs when you are feeling, your feeling is being treated as if they are fact. It's like feeling scared when you are flying and saying that because you are scared while flying, something is wrong with the plane. Or you feel that someone does not like you. And then you relate with that person based on the fact that you feel he does not like you without any fact to back it up. Not that he has abused you. Not that he has said anything against you. Not that he has done anything, either verbally or non-verbally. You just feel this person does not like me. And based on your feeling, you act. Based on your feeling, you act. Emotional reasoning. Reasoning based on your emotion. Using your emotion as the basis of your reasoning and taking decision based on that. The next one is the fallacy of change. This is believing that someone will change if you want them to change bad enough. This happens to some people when they want to get married. I will change the man. I will change the woman. Unknowing to you that you can't change anyone that does not want to change. You cannot change anyone that does not want to change. If the person has chosen not to change, you cannot change him. You can't change anyone that does not want to change. Another one is labeling. This involves the use of an unhealthy overstatement to describe yourself or another person. Like saying I'm a loser, or stigmatizing yourself, labeling yourself because of something that happened, labeling yourself. Another one is always being right. Can you imagine? Always being right. This makes you to see your view as always being right and everyone else being wrong. Your view has always been is a thought disorder. Your view has always been right. So you know what? In every argument, you must win. In every argument, you must win. In every argument, you must win. If you don't win, nobody will win. If you don't win, nobody will win. If you don't win, nobody will win. Why? Always being right. Always being right is a thought disorder. It's a thought disorder. If it's not dealt with, it can cause depression. This makes you to have a view that you're always right. Therefore, you must win every argument. Another one, the last one actually, should syndrome. Should syndrome. This makes you to always see what someone should have done to prevent a bad situation. What someone should have done to prevent a bad situation. What someone should have done to prevent a bad situation. That's what you always see. This does not have to do with correcting an error, but rather seeing what someone could have done in every bad situation, no matter how unreasonable it should have been. In every bad situation. In every bad situation. In every bad situation. Please note, if you relate with any of this, if you relate with any of this, if you relate with any of this thought destruction, if you recognize them in you, write them down and begin to walk around them. If you don't, you're going to increase more fear in your life. If you don't, you're going to increase worry. If you don't, you're going to increase anxiety. If you don't, you're going to increase the tendency towards depression. If you don't, you can slip into hopelessness and eventually suicide. These are disorders, thought disorders, that is causing depression in our world. Remember, our major fight is not obeying people against enemy, against witches and wizards, against the devil. Our major fight is the battle of our mind. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapon of our warfare are not carnal. They are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. See it again. Casting down imagination. Thought disorder, thought disorder, thought disorder, thought disorder, thought disorder. Casting down imagination, thought disorder. Casting down imagination, thought disorder. Casting down imagination, thought disorder. And every item that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And every item that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And bringing into captivity every thought disorder, and bringing to captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now, you need to first of all understand this is not a right way to think, and then you bring it into captivity. Ensure it's always subjected to thinking correctly, whatsoever things are true. Subjected to thinking correctly, whatsoever things are honest. You will notice in the thought disorder, people jump into conclusion. It's not a honest evaluation, but they jump into conclusion. Whatsoever things are honest, just, whatsoever things are just. You notice in one of the example, people just blame others unjustifiably. Whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely. Overgeneralization that make you to hate people because someone did bad to you. Overgeneralization. Whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any praise, think on these things. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to feed your mind with the right set of words to think about. Think on this thing. Think correctly. Think aright. It's so important for us as humans. If we don't, we just make our life more miserable, terrible. When we focus on only the bad things happening in our life, and we refuse to see all the good things that is happening in our life, it creates stress for us. Make our life difficult. By next week, we are actually going to be talking about managing thought disorder. And that will be part 6 of Stop Worrying and Start Living. Oh, okay, I have about 3 people available today. Okay, let me hear from you. Oge, I think Oge joined early. Ngozi, good evening. Oge, are you there? Hello, Oge, are you there? Sheung, can you hear me, please? Hello, Sheung. What have you learned tonight? Thanks for joining. Hello, can you hear me?
Thank you very much, sir. I think I learned
yes,
to
thank
just
you.
take responsibility. Yes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you very much, sir. The major thing I learned is that one should take personal responsibility.
Yes. Hello?
For any actions, anything that happens to one should take personal responsibility.
Very important. Very important. Very important. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Are you available now?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, how are you?
Thank you.
Good evening.
So, I thank you very much for discussion tonight. I actually learned a lot.
Yeah. Go ahead. We can't hear you again.
If I think about it.
Okay.
To a very large extent, I can say that there are 1 or 2 or 3 items on those lists that actually affect my person. So I'm just saying myself, and to a very large extent, a large number of persons for so many reasons. Maybe for our environment, for the fact that we want to create excuses. I think we talked about the generalization. So we have generalization, we have the black and white.
Yes.
I know I used to have that when I was a lot smaller, because I was like, you can't fail any test. Like, I would rather concentrate on that one that I missed out in the class, that one that the teacher failed. I'll concentrate on it and leave the other ones. I think even growing up now, I still challenge myself that why would I fail this particular, why did I not get this thing? So I think to a very large extent, it's a very thin line, and it's something that creeps in unconsciously to some extent, especially because we probably are not taking note of it. So I think one of the things I took away tonight is to actually be conscious of my thoughts, be conscious of what I am dwelling on, or what I am thinking. Even around the workplace, you have a lot of persons who will do the blame game kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you do something, and then even before they ask them, the person is already pointing a finger somewhere. Oh, this is where the ball was dropped, just so that that finger does not come back to the person. While you were taking the class, I remember a time where we had a training in the office, and it centered on.
You are muted.
Mind blowing to know that you think that mental disorder, you just think that, oh, this a person that is mentally who has mental issues, it's probably somebody who's on the street.
You are muted again.
Classified and they analyze it, they discover that almost how many percent of even people who we work with or who we relate with day to day have this mental disorder, but we don't know. And going by what the discussions you've had today, I can tell that it's in their thoughts. So it's from inside. So inside of them, somebody just gets aggressive for no reason, reacts in a particular way for no reason, or probably act based on emotions. So if we say, for instance, even looking at the country, what's happening presently in the country today, you would see that we already have this generalization. Igbos like money. This set of people do this. This set of people do this. Funny enough, even in our consciousness or unconsciousness, when we now grow up and people want to marry, you will see families coming up with that thing and say, no, these people, these persons, they don't have respect. This one not part of it. This one, they would like money. So I think to a very large extent, just like the scripture says that we should guard our heart, while what we think on, what we dwell on, but to look at the good side of things. We're giving a life that we did not pay for. So we are not more qualified to be seeing a particular day. And rather than give gratitude to God for seeing a day, we most times think of, oh, what God has not given us. Oh, I've woken up this morning, there's no Gary to drink, there's nothing to eat, there's nothing to lay my hands on. Forgetting that there are people who could not even wake up, not because they had any reasons why they couldn't wake up. Some have maybe fallen ill for one reason or the other, that it's not pertaining to something they did or did not do.
Yeah.
So not even recognizing the mercy of God and recognizing his work in our life, his workings, our breathing freely. So when we go to the hospital and we see people actually buying oxygen, then we now know the importance of each breath we take at each minute.
Yes.
And how important it is to gain oxygen. So I think, and it's actually very important at this moment, because a lot of persons are going through so many things, especially not just because globally things are happening, but more pressure and a lot of things are happening even by this discussion. And take note of those things that you think relates to you, or the items that relate to me. I'm going to take note of those things and try to consciously switch my thoughts. So if it's black and white, instead of me saying, I'm looking at that 1% that they work out, I'll look at those times where they came back with good things about me, rather than dwell on what one person said that didn't go down well with me.
Yes.
It's happening in my mind.
Yeah, Favor, thank you very much. I love your contribution tonight. Thank you. I didn't know you were the one when I saw, okay. Ngozi, yes, Ngozi, are you there tonight? Hello, Ngozi. And how is school?
Yes, I am, sir. Good evening, sir. School is fine. It's doing well, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Because though I joined a bit late, I was able to get a meeting or two from what you were highlighting. I mean, what you talked about. I just have to go through the record again. But based on no, I said a lot. Like I was even learning from what you were saying and what I missed. And then when you were listing most of these things, I felt like it's normal now. This is a normal thing. If you look at someone and then give an example of my voice game, there's every tendency for you to like feel or act on your feeling that oh, this person does not like me, and that one especially
Wow. It's tough hearing you. I can't hear you again. Wow. We can't hear you at all. Ngozi?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Ngozi, can you take it again, please? I was logged out. I just came back. Go ahead now.
Okay, I said earlier that most of what you mentioned
Yes.
are things that to a large extent I felt it was normal.
Wow.
I mean, for example, the area of having to apply what you feel someone's feeling about you, then having to react on it. Then I felt like okay, like this someone and I feel the person does not really like me or does not want me. There's every tendency to want to like leave it out. You get so like most of what you said, it's now like an awareness that okay, wait, most of us these things we mentally aren't right. Like it's not straight anymore, and it's not like it's not a normal thing. So it's and then when it comes to mental issues, it's not something that we even get to even understand. And we don't something we can easily pinpoint and say that okay, this and this are the issues. It has been so inculcated into our system such that it's not like a normal way of life already. I would say like a culture. So yes, thank you very much for all you said. Although I didn't really get much, I'll go through the recording, sir.
No problem. I will drop the recording tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone, for being able to make it tonight. It's been an interesting session. Next, we'll be discussing how do we manage all these issues? How do we manage all these thought disorders? See you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.